Hey, 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 welcome to Rise Up Assignment 9, your introduction to redlining. So, we're going to switch topics this week. We're going to start talking about what is redlining and what are the effects of redlining from the 1940s to 1960s. So, this is going to be your mini lesson video where I kind of tell you a little bit about what redlining is and how it worked, and then you can use that to help you complete the rest of the assignment where you watch a different video and answer these questions here. Okay, so let's go over the notes together. A little background info for what we're talking about. We're talking about the time period of like the 1940s to 50s and kind of the 60s too, where there were Jim Crow laws, which were laws that required the segregation or racial separation of white and, quote, colored people. So white people and, black or Hispanic people had to use separate water fountains, like it's shown in the picture here, separate movie theaters, separate schools, all that stuff. Okay. And at the same time that was happening, there was also a big growth of the suburbs, okay, in the 1950s. The suburbs are like neighborhoods with middle class housing outside of cities that you kind of see as the average family growing up in the suburbs. And here's like a picture of a suburban neighborhood here, right? Like you kind of see them in a lot of like TVs and movies and stuff like that. In the 1950s, those types of neighborhoods really grew, and a lot of families started to move to those neighborhoods and buy homes, which is great. It grows your family's wealth if you own a home, right? Your worth. So redlining has to do with buying a home. A little background information on the steps that you take when you buy a home. Most people can't afford to buy a home. Most people don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars just sitting in their bank account. So what most people do to buy a home is they get a loan from the bank. Okay? And here's how this works. Someone who is buying a home, their first step is to request a home loan from the bank. Okay? The second step is the bank, who is funded by the government, and has rules set up by the government, right? They can approve that loan. They might not, but oftentimes they do approve a loan for you to buy a home. So then that buyer borrows money from the bank. Okay? And over time, to pay back the bank for that loan, the home buyer, makes monthly payments to the bank, and that is called mortgage payments. Okay, so when we talk about a mortgage, it's a monthly payment you make to the bank to pay back the bank for your home loan. Okay? Now, what does this have to do with redlining? Well, redlining was a policy from like the 1940s to the 1960s, or a strategy that the government and banks used sort of together, that segregated neighborhoods, that made some neighborhoods basically all black and some all white. And the way it works was that the banks and government would draw up a map, of a neighborhood. Like, for example, this one here is a map of Brooklyn, and they would color code the neighborhoods, right, based on who lived there and whether that neighborhood was quote unquote dangerous. But let me tell you, when they say dangerous, it basically means a neighborhood with mostly black people or mostly minorities. Okay? And they would color code those dangerous black or minority neighborhoods in red, and all the other safe white neighborhoods in yellow, green, or blue, depending on different things. Okay? And if you lived in the red neighborhood, again, which is mostly black people and minorities, the banks or the government would not give you a home loan. You could not get a loan to buy a house. And therefore, a lot of black people and minorities could not buy homes. Okay? And that is what redlining was. Okay? Another strategy that a lot of sort of neighborhoods would use was that they would make rules that only white residents could live in that neighborhood, right? For example, there's a neighborhood called Levittown in New York, a very popular suburban neighborhood in the 50s that didn't allow white people. It still exists today. The effects of redlining were that black people were unable to get loans for their houses, which led to a big racial wealth gap, meaning white families made a lot more money than black families, which is still true today. And this led to racially segregated neighborhoods, like a black neighborhood and white neighborhoods, right? Which led to racially segregated schools, because schools are mostly based on neighborhoods, so black schools versus white schools.